Westgate way back in 1973. Since then, I've earned national board certification. I've completed my master's degree, and I'm just one semester away from my education specialist degree, always intending to stay in the classroom. I do this because I do believe in lifelong learning. I set high standards for my students, and I expect nothing less of myself. I love math. Effectively analyzing and utilizing data is a routine part of every day in my classroom. I've taught under all 5 of the principals that my school has ever had and have been rated by all of them with nothing less than the highest levels. So back to the new evaluation system that is supposed to identify outstanding teacher performance based on their students' FCAT scores and be used to determine teacher pay in the future. Last year in faculty meetings, the evaluation system was explained, and since we are an elementary school, only our 4th and 5th grade classroom teachers have FCAT results for their specific students. And those teachers were told that 50% of their evaluation would be based on their students' FCAT scores. But the majority of the teachers at my school are the primary grades, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade teachers. And we don't have FCAT scores for our own students, so we were told we would use school scores, and because we were using other students' scores, it would be 40% of our evaluations. They went on to explain that the score would be based on value-added model called VAM, and it would, and the words were, level the playing field and numerically eliminate the disparity between school students. Westgate is a Title I school. We have over 70% of our students qualifying for free and reduced lunches. Our student population includes ELL students for whom English is a second language. We have EBD classrooms for students with emotional behavior disabilities. We have students with speech and language impairments, hearing loss, visual impairments, students who need physical therapy, students who need occupational therapy, and very importantly, we have a high mobility rate for our students. Just in my room alone last year, I had a full third of my students new to Westgate. This year, again, my class came in with a full third new to Westgate. And VAM was supposed to ensure that the teachers who chose to teach in schools with challenging students had the same opportunities on their evaluations as teachers, say, in a gifted center. The reality is that the value-added model has nothing at all to do with adding, nor does it have anything to do with my proficiency as a teacher. My assigned score was 11.27. That is not an extra 11 points added to my evaluation to level the playing field. It's only receiving 11.27 points out of 50. So 50, not 40. It was changed, and all the primary teachers, as long as they had been at the school for 3 years, it was a full half of our evaluations. It is a full half. My evaluation part that comes from my principal and assistant principal only counts 40%, but every part was in effective and highly effective. My professional development part was 100%, but it only counts 10. The value-added model negated all that and put my overall evaluation as needs improvement. This VAM is not a formula for identifying effective teaching. It is part of a flawed evaluation system that is demoralizing, and it's unfair to the very teachers who are caring and hardworking professionals. My hope is that this media exposure will lead to re-examination of the system and removal of the VAM penalty so that teacher evaluations return to being just that, teacher evaluations. Thank you for listening.
From Yulee, a French and biology teacher at Yulee High School.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Falk, and I am from Nassau County. I have taught at Yulee High School since it's opened 7 years ago. To give you an idea of our school's achievements, our students last year alone earned 1,866 college credit hours as part of our dual enrollment program, where students earned both high school and college credit. At Yulee High School, I am part of that dual enrollment program where I teach college level biology as well as high school French and high school biology. In our county, a district end of course exam, or EOC, was created for both the French classes and the dual enrollment biology. The state EOC was used for the high school biology classes. Last year, 88% of my students passed the French EOC. 90% passed the dual enrollment biology EOC. 93% passed the state biology EOC. However, when the value-added model was calculated into my evaluation, my passing rate dropped to a 54%. My classroom evaluations identified me as highly effective. I was Teacher of the Year in 2010. I received high evaluations in my college classes, and my passing rates were 88% and above. Yet thanks to VAM, my passing rate was a 54%. So how is a value-added model, a flawed system by the Department of Education's own admission, identifying ineffective teachers? A system who took my scores of 88, my student scores of 88%, 90 and 93% down to 54%. Value-added model, perhaps more of a value-subtracted model. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Now I'd like to introduce Melissa Stokes from Hilliard, a 4th grade teacher at Yulee Elementary School.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Stokes and I'm from Nassau County. I'm a 4th grade teacher in a Title I school where we have over 56% of children who are on free or reduced lunch. My classroom is often referred as having a revolving door. This simply means I teach in a community where students jump from school to school or have to move depending on family dynamics. They may or may not be there for both student counts, one in October and the other in February, so their score may not count for the school, but it does count for my own personal evaluation. I teach general education students as well as special needs students, which range from having Asperger's disease, emotional disorders, ADHD, other health impaired, among other diagnoses for 6 subject areas. I have 11 out of 22. That's right, 11 out of 22 students classified as homeless. And 13 of the 22 students who have, because of their special needs, have specific individualized education plans in place. In other words, they are receiving services based upon their own personal requirements. 5 of my students leave my room for reading and math assistance and then return to me for the other subject areas. VAM is of no use to my evaluation. How is it fair that writing scores in the 4th grade count for me if a child is unable to read the prompt? Last year, I was the 7th teacher for one particular child. He came to me reading at a 1st grade level. I worked on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade phonics and reading skills with this child. He was responsible for taking the Florida Rights test. However, he could not read the prompt. After 20 minutes of painstakingly looking over his test, he began writing. He sounded out the word camel, which he remembered the rules for short vowels I had just taught him 2 weeks prior. I have no idea what he wrote. I really don't even care what he wrote. I just know that he wrote and his success was sounding out one 5-letter word. This year, after requesting a behavior specialist to help me with these children, it took 10 weeks for them to schedule a meeting. I had already researched ways in which to help my kids. When these children are living with grandparents, doubling up in homes, tripling up in homes, they have parents who are incarcerated, and even dealing with death throughout their year. Show me where VAM has very little crucial elements embedded into their formula. Nassau County is an A district, and I'm proud to have contributed to this achievement for the past 9 years. However, with the new value-added model hovering over the heads of our teachers, it is negatively and unfairly affecting the way our teachers are being looked at. Not to mention the fact that it is having a negative impact in our classrooms. Our children are what's important. My kids are what's important. And with this system, as it is repeatedly being confirmed as having its flaws, will only trickle down on losing good teachers who can help grow and teach these children, teach my children. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. I'd like to introduce Polly Burkhart from Winter Haven, a science coach at Oscar J. Pope Elementary School. My
My name is Polly Burkhart. I teach in Polk County. For the past 3 years, I've served on the District Teacher Evaluation Committee as part of the subcommittee responsible for writing the evaluation rubric now being used as part of the new evaluation system. As a National Board Certified teacher, I believe that setting high, well-defined standards for teachers not only identifies high-performing teachers, but more importantly, serves as a roadmap for continuous improvement of all teachers. Like any skill, improvement comes from practice, feedback, and more practice. As a committee, we studied the research, had thoughtful discussions with stakeholders, and considered the evaluation model favored by the state in order to develop a rubric that values what is considered best practice. We also worked to determine how VAM scores would factor into the overall evaluation. The frustration that we felt was that the rules, as communicated by the DOE, were subject to constant change and, despite repeated requests, were not conveyed in writing. The rules vary depending on whom you talk to at the DOE. It was virtually impossible to finalize the plan because the rules changed dramatically and frequently. Clearly, any new system needs to be piloted in order to uncover and correct systemic flaws. The opportunity to pilot the new system was withdrawn, and as a result, teachers are being adversely affected by a highly flawed system. At best, evaluations cannot be finalized until fall, after VAM scores have been calculated and reported to districts. This time frame does not allow districts time to staff schools appropriately and for teachers to make career moves which may be necessitated once their evaluation has been finalized. This year, because the DOE did not report VAM scores to the districts until well past the time frame identified in statute, teachers in many districts, including my own, still have no final evaluation more than a quarter of the way into the current school year. 4 years ago, I left my position at a magnet middle school, which continually earns a school grade of A, to accept the challenge of being a science coach at an elementary school which received an F during the 08-09 school year. Only teachers identified as high performers were eligible to apply for these coaching positions. My current school has a 48% mobility rate. 98% of our students are on free and reduced price lunch. 28% of our students are identified as having a disability which requires that they have an individual education plan. 35% are English language learners, and our students have high levels of absenteeism and excessive tardyism. In spite of the challenges faced by the students in my school, our 5th grade science scores exceeded both the district and the state averages during the 11-12 school years. However, science is not part of the VAM score, and as I am not a teacher of record for any of the students, 50% of my evaluation will be based on the school VAM score, over which I have no control. Despite my proven past record as a science teacher, including being named Science Teacher of the Year by the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, being National Board Certified in middle grade science, and being named Runner-Up Teacher of the Year in my district, my career, and possibly my future earnings, are being held hostage to a purely arbitrary VAM score, which in no way reflects my impact on student learning. My real concern, however, is not about how this affects me, but the fact that the use of the VAM score is likely to discourage capable teachers from accepting the challenges of working in a school like mine, thereby leaving our struggling students even more vulnerable. In order to achieve, these at-risk students need highly competent teachers and the stability of teachers who are passionate about working with them. The reality of what a school VAM score may do to their career may dissuade teachers from staying in or applying for positions in high-need schools like my own, therefore leaving these schools with a revolving door of teachers with a mobility rate to match that of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Now I'd like to introduce Bev Kurak from Amelia Island. She's the president of Nassau Teacher Association and teacher at Yulee Middle School.
Good morning. I am Bev Kurek, and I am the president of Nassau Teachers Association. I also am a full-time teacher at Yulee Middle School. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students as a youth school suspension teacher. I'm responsible for students whose behavioral problems prohibit them from being in a traditional general education classroom. These students are typically 1 to 2 grade levels behind the students with whom they started kindergarten. The children in my classroom are mine from the time the bus drops them off in the morning until the time I put them back on the bus in the afternoon. These students even have their lunch delivered to my classroom and eat in my room. They go nowhere. I currently have a total of 12 courses for which I must prepare daily. This is in addition to the behavioral instruction which must be provided. My primary responsibility is to help these students transition back into a general education classroom and to be successful in that setting. I'm the only teacher out of 41 teachers at my school whose evaluation has not been completed yet. The reason for that? No one knows exactly how to evaluate my teaching performance because the students that I work with do not take the FCAT, the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, nor end-of-course exams with me. The purpose of those tests is to evaluate performance and growth in the subjects of English, math, science, and history. And my primary responsibility is behavior and transitioning back to a general classroom. In a system openly acknowledged by the Florida Department of Education as flawed, I fail to see how my district, let alone any district in the state, can justify using it to evaluate performance of a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Now I'm proud to introduce Andy Ford, President of Florida Education Association.
Good morning. What you just heard proves that the teacher evaluation system imposed by Senate Bill 736 is not ready for prime time. It is a clearly flawed process that needs much tweaking and revamping before teachers and parents can trust the validity of the value-added model, and that is the value-added formula that the Department of Education utilizes. We're not afraid of accountability. We welcome it. But it is essential that everyone believes in the evaluation system and that it accurately reflects what is accomplished in the classroom. That's why I've asked Governor Rick Scott to use his executive authority to suspend the statutory requirement on public school districts to apply value-added model scores to teacher evaluations for the 11-12 school year. Yes, teachers are just receiving their evaluations for last school year. I've also requested that the governor place a moratorium on the use of the value-added model until there is a clear, convincing research on proven merits of the VAM to improve student learning and teaching practice, as well as sufficient data and capable infrastructure to implement a timely, accurate process. FEA is convinced about the obvious flaws in the VAM scores this year and how they will play out in the future. In 3 years, this data is supposed to be part of awarding merit pay and making employment decisions for all teachers in the state of Florida. How can this happen when the DOE itself casts doubts on their numbers? There's plenty of research that suggests this is an incorrect approach. In Problems with the Use of Student Test Scores to Evaluate Teachers, the authors say, the research community has cautioned against heavily reliance on test scores, even when sophisticated VAM methods are used for high-stakes decisions such as pay, evaluation, and tenure. The Board on Testing and the Assessment of the National Research Council of the National Academy of Sciences states VAM estimates on teacher effectiveness should not be used to make operational decisions because such estimates are far too unstable to be considered as fair or reliable. That's why I'm asking FEA members to call, email, and write the governor to tell their stories about how this evaluation system is impacting our profession. The use of the value-added model isn't an improvement over previous teacher evaluation processes. Until we have faith in the system, VAM should not be used for any high-stakes purposes. Thank you, and we will entertain any questions that you may have.
Has the governor responded to your request for suspension?
We've had some exchanges of letters back and forth. Basically what the governor has said is, and so has the Commissioner of Education, that they're proceeding.
Ms. Goodwin threw out some numbers, I think, saying you got an 11 out of 40 or 11 out of 50, 11 out of 50. So what does that really mean? And are there negative numbers on that scale? What does the scale look like, and what does that number mean to you?
I wish I could give you a better answer. What we were told was value-added model. I thought of like handicapping in golf, you know, added, and for our school because we do have such special needs. So to find it, the first time we saw it was on our paper when we received our evaluation, and then it was just at the end of October for my school. And there was a column, and it said possible points 50, and then 11.27 was in my column. And then when I checked, you know, when everybody was like, what is this? Everybody that was in my same position of kindergarten, first, second, third, had that same 11.27 out of 50, and everyone's evaluation just plummets for the total because it's a half of what, it's half of that 100 points. So, you know, I can't, I mean, I'm good at math, and I minored in it, I did it in my master's, but I can't tell you any more than that.
So then, I guess the question becomes, what consequences does that number have for you? That number that
you know, right now they're claiming, oh, don't worry about it. I've never been called needs improvement at this stage of my life. Come on, please. If I were a parent coming into the school, and I would want to see how are the teacher evaluations at this school. And oh, by the way, we are an A school this year. The learning gains for our 4th and 5th grade students made us an A school, but 11.27, that's why we're saying it's so frustrating. As a parent, I would be very upset to have my student, my child, in a classroom with a teacher that had a needs improvement. You know, she's been at it since 1973, and she needs improvement. You know, but you know and eventually pay. They want to pay us on the basis of that. It's really demoralizing and very frustrating to have that label put on you. It really is.
I think that's some of the concern that we have, is how is this going to play out? Right now, the department is saying it doesn't have an impact for 3 years, but you have to look at scores over a 3-year period to make employment decisions. So this will have an impact. This isn't like a pretest that we just throw out 3 years from now. It's going to have a real-life effect on teachers. The formula was crafted. It was crafted by a committee. They claim it's supposed to factor out all the effects that are listed in the law that it needs to factor out. Who knows? I didn't know that was math when I saw it. Most of those characters are not on a keyboard that I ever see. So it's a system that is not easily understood, which is a requirement according to the research to make something work. It's not reliable because the DOE is telling us it's not reliable because there's problems with the data. So how can anybody believe that this is a good system? Florida would rather be first than get it right. And it's affecting real people's lives at this point. And hopefully, as the new legislature is convening, the people who are here to represent the citizens of the state of Florida will step up and make some changes to do something that would be good. We support accountability. We support looking at a way to make this happen. But this system isn't it.
How do you respond to Commissioner Stewart saying that acknowledge the essential role that teachers and representatives of the Florida Education Association played in developing Florida's value-added method.
We had teachers serve on that committee, but that was it. And quite frankly, most of this sounds good when you're sitting in a room and you're discussing it. It's when you actually get to look at the hard numbers and you hear the stories of what's happening. Like there's one where, similar to a story you just heard here, a teacher that teaches advanced placement courses where kids can get college credit while they're going through high school. Virtually all of his students actually get college credit, yet he's not rated as highly effective or even effective. There's something wrong with the system, and we need to have it examined.
Has any other state done this with any success?
A lot of states are talking about it. Nobody has fully implemented it the way we are, and we need to take a look at why they're not doing it. Researchers all over the country, legitimate researchers, not right-wing think tanks, but legitimate researchers, are saying that this system just can't be rolled out in a reliable way. That when they have studied it over the course of many years, the variances between high and low continue to show up in the formula, so that using it for the decisions that we're trying to use this for, salary, continued employment, for an annual contract teacher reappointment, just doesn't make sense. Plus the timing is all wrong. I mean, this is November. We're getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving, and teachers don't have their evaluation from last year. So how can school boards make employment decisions that are based on any data? Under the old system, teachers were required to have their evaluation in March, so that the school board could take action in May on whether they were going to be reappointed for an annual contract teacher or they were going to move to terminate. We are now into well of the second half of the second marking period of the school year, and we don't know the performance of teachers from last year. The mechanics just don't work, if nothing else.
Now you all challenged the rule on evaluation. How does that figure into all this?
Well, we challenged the rule that implemented VAM based on the way the DOE went about advertising it, holding public hearings. They did not follow the law. We won that. We are also challenging, and the first court date is January 16th, the constitutionality of 736. And we'll work through that. But you know, it could take several years to actually work its way through the court system. And in the process, you're going to be damaging people's lives.
Well, did that rule challenge perhaps affect the timetable on this?
No, actually, the DOE just continued to go ahead and implement it as if they had won. And they made a decision not to appeal, and they're going to go about the new rulemaking process. And we'll see how that plays out. And they have not given us any details on what the game plan is for following the law this time.
Are you planning to go back to the legislature and say, guys, maybe you ought to, pull back on this?
If nothing else, the legislature needs to push the pause button, and let's get the stakeholders in a room, and let's try to solve some of the dilemmas that we have with this. The timing isn't right. It doesn't appear that the formula is accurately factoring out all the things that need to make it a fair system. We don't have the tests in place to even make this work. Only about 35,000 Florida teachers teach FCAT subjects, yet you're evaluating 225,000 teachers on a system that only 35,000 give the test that you're using. We need some time to catch up, and let's get it right. I would rather get it right than just get it done.
Now, is there some other system out there that would be better than this?
When you look at individual school communities across the country, several have bargained language that uses student test data, not nearly at the 50% mark though. The one that, and I haven't really fully analyzed what happened in Newark last week, but if Governor Governor Christie and the President of the American Federation of Teachers can sit down and negotiate an evaluation system that's acceptable, I certainly think Florida ought to be able to do that.
And now Hillsborough has this grant. Are they doing their own system, or are they part of this?
Kind of would be. They're somewhat affected by this law, and then in other aspects they're able to do their own thing. 50% does count for them, but Hillsborough is unique in the state of Florida in many respects. They've had end-of-course exams since the 1970s. So they have much data to be able to develop a system, and they're using their own tests for all their teachers. So it is a different situation.
Well, is their system better than this? And perhaps maybe that the state should just adopt their system.
Well, we need to look at it. Actually, Hillsborough County School Board is willing to sell their exams to anybody who wants to buy them because they spent a lot of money developing them. But I think that proves a point. Their exams were developed, they were field tested, they were adjusted, they were field tested again, and they have been used for many years to be able to say that their tests are very, very accurate and reliable when they believe in them. We don't have the same kind of faith in the state system because we're just moving too quick. Everybody got to run for re-election saying that they changed the teacher evaluation system. Now let's pause and go back and do it right since they got the credit that they were looking for.
Now, does the Race to the Top grant thing require this value-added system?
To some extent. Race to the Top requires some of what we're trying to implement in 736, but 736 went well beyond what Race to the Top requires. And Race to the Top was an experiment to see if it worked. Districts were supposed to build the systems to be able to make these judgments. And Race to the Top was, eventually the grant's running out. The Florida legislature chose to jump on the bandwagon and put it into state law, which was a little more troubling.
All right, the last question.
If they're not being used for pay right now, and it hasn't been turned in to be used in the evaluations yet, what would the practical effect of a suspension be? What are y'all trying to head off right now?
Well, what the districts were required to do last Friday, I believe, was submit all the names and the ratings of teachers to the Department of Education. So they are now in the record. So that 3 years from now, they will be used in deciding whether teachers are retained or if they are going to be terminated. Their salary in a system that's yet to be designed for merit pay will be implemented. So this is going to have a real life effect 3 years from now.
Everybody here will be around for a little while longer, so thank you so much for coming out today.